As I started to think about summertime stories, um, and maybe because we just celebrated Father's Day, you know, my mind kept going to all these different stories, and I thought, man, my dad really played a huge role in my child life and in my adult life, and I was just thinking that he's really a leading role in so many of the stories in my life. And so I realized, my dad is my hero. And I was thinking, when I was a kid, he would tuck my brother and I into bed at night, and he would read to us as we kind of drifted off to sleep. And I'd try so hard just to stay awake, toss and turn, just for one whole chapter. But I could feel my eyes just getting heavy as his deep voice, carried on the harrowing tale of Bilbo Baggins. And so I slowly slipped into a silent slumber and into a world of cunning elves and proud dwarves and talking trees and gargantuan spiders and wonderful wizards casting spells in the misty mountains. And I was just reminded that my dad really helped to awaken the sense of adventure in my heart and in my life. And when I was a little older, my dad's in sports. He taught me how to play every sport that I love to play, except for maybe Frisbee golf. You ever play that? I don't know, but he did have this cool little flick of the Frisbee that I eventually learned how to do. But we lived in a small town, 2,000 people in West Texas, and they were big on football, big on baseball. But he noticed that the high school basketball team was struggling all the time. So he decided to form a youth version of a basketball league, and we didn't have any rec leagues. So I was excited about that. But even though he had taught me how to play basketball, he was not allowed to be my coach as per the team rules. And so at the end of the season, championship game, it was his group of third graders against my team. And I think by the end of the game, you couldn't find a coach who was more proud of losing a championship game than he was. And I think they replaced that rule. I think he was able to coach me afterwards. But whether or not he was my coach or someone else's coach, or whether he was in the stands cheering me on, or whether he was just outside the gym doors from having been kicked out by the referee, he is one of my biggest fans. And he showed me that by teaching me a healthy competition. Every young man needs to be tested in healthy ways, and he taught me how to do that. And then I was thinking, one winter time, this is kind of a little bit of a winter story. We were living in the Sierras, and there was about 24 inches of soft snowpack, and he decided that at age 13 he was going to teach me how to drive a standard stick shift in the snow. So okay, I'm game for it. And so he takes us up to a remote road, puts me behind the wheel, puts the fire engine red Jeep Wrangler into four-wheel drive and lets me go. And of course he's in the car too, but we're slipping and sloshing around for quite some time, and he wants me to go onto a paved road that's been snowplowed. And I'm real nervous because by nature I'm a rule follower, and so I don't want to get in trouble. And he's like, I don't know, he insisted. So okay. So I'm driving along the road, and we're jerking and jostling, as you can imagine a first-time driver is. And he tells me to pull over, onto this side road. And so I pop the clutch a little too quickly and press down the gas pedal with a little too much force, swing wildly wide, and scare him half to death, as well as probably a cute little mailbox that I think I saw it jump out of the way. I'm not sure, but through that and other experiences, my dad taught me that he was willing to put some trust in me. He was willing to put some faith in me. And every young man needs someone important in his life to say, I trust you. At least a little bit, I trust you. And so my summertime story is about my dad. It's about adventure. It's about being tested. And it's about the highest form of trust. Starting early in the morning, my dad and I looked over our bags, and we made sure that we were fully packed and ready to go. We had flashlights and snacks. We had our lunch, 4 water bottles, more snacks. We had a map. We had first aid kit and more snacks. and an extra pair of socks, just in case. And as a young Boy Scout, how's it go? Boy Scout, I learned the motto, be prepared. Unfortunately, my Cub Scout leader quit just a couple years into it, and so I didn't get much further along than that. But we were prepared for this hike. We started the Misty Trail. So we're walking along this misty trail. It's a slow, gentle walk. It goes across a wooden footbridge into a thinly, actually it was pretty thick, a thickly packed pine forest. And I look up and there is this most amazing staircase that you've ever seen. Hundreds of stairs hewn into the side of the mountain. And as you go up, they become increasingly more moist and damp, and there's different colored lichen and green moss. And we look over to our left, and here's Vernal Falls. And it's just gushing gallons and gallons of water. And you look down, and the water vapors is billowing up like smoke from a never-ending bonfire. And as picturesque as this was, we wanted to stop and enjoy it. We had to keep moving on. And so we got at the top of Vernal Falls. We had ascended 1,000 feet, vertical feet, on these stairs. And so we're a little bit out of breath, so we take a little break. And we proceed on to the next leg of our journey. Well, this was up the next set of falls called Nevada Falls. And we encountered something that I hadn't really registered in my mind before, but it was the idea of switchbacks. I hate switchbacks. Switchbacks are terrible. I mean, think you're a 12-year-old kid and you're walking sideways for 50 to 100 yards, and then you make a U-turn, and then you walk the same distance, and you make another U-turn and walk the same distance, and it became hypnotically laborious for a kid. And I could see these game trails, and I could see these little routes cutting up vertically, and I'm wondering, why don't we take those instead of this, pendulum pathway going back and forth? But as every good hiker knows, and as all the signs say, please stay on designated trails. And it wasn't a sprint, so we continued on. And we worked our way to the top of Nevada Falls, and we saw this big granite node coming up along the side of us. It was Liberty Cap, very amazing. And we decided to have a snack break, and we talked about the beauty that was around us, the tranquility, the serenity, the quietness, before we continued on our journey. We walked a little further, and we veered away from the river, from the path, and we followed the baseline of this Liberty's node. And the path became much more flat, which was great. So we could walk side by side, and with the smell of pine trees in the air and the crackle and the dust of the needles beneath us, we talked about nature, we talked about family, we talked about the creator of it all. And I really felt in that moment super connected with my dad. And I felt like a storybook character. I felt like a prince following in the faithful footsteps of the king. And I realized that this was more than just an adventurous hike. It was more than a nature walk. It was a rite of passage experience for myself. But we still had 2,500, that would be enormous, 2,500 vertical feet left to go. So you know what came next, which was more switchbacks. And so we went back and forth, encouraged each other on. We had started our trek heading south, a little bit east. We'd come a long way north, and now we started to trail a little bit to the west. So we knew that we were towards the end, and this knowledge helped propel our feet forward. So we came upon this ridgeline, and we could begin to see the view of the high Sierras, and it was breathtaking. And we had one more really steep set of switchbacks to go. And once we were on top of that, there was a smooth, mound that with no trees on it, because by this time we'd have gone way above the ridge line, and our pace really slowed down. And not because the trail was more difficult. It actually looked a little bit easier for a way. But we could see up ahead something that made us very nervous, that made us very excited, that made us really happy, that made us really depressed. And it was the final 400 feet. So we stopped, and we had a snack, we had a drink, we interviewed a few people that had come down, and we looked up there, and it just seemed like this cloud of doubt that came and just was raining down on us because we were so pumped and so excited. We had so much adrenaline, positive adrenaline for this trip. And then now we had a lot of adrenaline, but it was more like the life-preserving, like, I don't want to die type of adrenaline. Because what was in front of us was the back surface of this mountain we were climbing. And it was a 45-degree angle. It was, we didn't have any climbing ropes, no climbing cables, no spikes on our shoes. There was no safety net or harness to hold us back. There was no ranger in his suit standing there saying, "You must be this tall to enter." You know, there was nothing. There was nobody except for other straggling hikers. And so we took a deep breath, and we'd come so far. We're not going to stop now. So my dad let me go first. So I put one sweaty palm on these cables. In 1919, at this particular place, they'd installed cables, and hopefully they had replaced them since then. But one steady hand, and then the other hand on top, one hand on top of the other, one foot in front of one shaky foot, and we began our ascent. Now, every 10 feet or so, there's a splintery, 2x4 that had been there a long time, and occasionally they were missing, and some were a little bit distorted, this way or that. You wouldn't want to put your feet on it. So these cables also were kind of held up by metal poles, 3.5 or 4 feet tall. But the poles were just merely sitting in little holes that had been drilled into the ground. So they weren't fastened. So a lot of the poles had already fallen over. So we'd have to reach down and grab this cable. And as we're going slowly but surely up the face, I look to the left. And I see this just wall of granite, smooth granite that we're climbing. And way off in the background is this vista of mountains, really hazy. And then I look to the right, and it's the same thing. And I look above, and it's just this wall of granite. It's horizontal from this vantage point. And I just see it framed by a dusty blue sky. And then I get up the courage to look down. So I look over my shoulder. Oh, it was a hair-raising sight. Because from our vantage point, we're looking down at a 45-degree angle, everything looked distorted because of all of the tricky angles and the rolling of the hills. And even though we had just come up that way, it did not look familiar at all. And so I decided to keep my eyes forward and focus on the cables. And we stopped several times to rest and to pray and to rest a little bit more. And we felt our hearts beating and our breath kind of slowing. But it was to be understandable because we were at 8,000 feet above sea level. And it was quite a new experience for the both of us. So we decided to continue on. We were almost there. And I'm thinking back and looking back at this experience. I'm feeling this was real life adventure. This was, you're tasting it, you're feeling it adventure. This was me being tested by nature alongside my father, my mentor. And this was us putting trust in these old rusty cables and a pair of hiking boots and the Lord God Almighty. And we made it. We came to the top, and there was only one thing left to do, which also we had to work up a little bit of courage. So he said, you ready to go to the edge? And I said, okay. So we got a little bit closer, about 10 feet away. He said, get on your hands and knees. So we get on our knees, and he said, you want to get and look over the edge? And okay. I'm like, my eyes are wide like a kid opening the biggest present under the Christmas tree, And we get about 5 feet from the edge. He says, let's get on our stomachs. So we get down on our stomachs, and we're doing the commando crawl, right? All the way to the edge. And he goes, you ready? I said, ready. And so we peek over the precipice, and we look 5,000 feet, vertical feet, straight down to the valley floor over the face of Half Dome, Yosemite National Park's Half Dome. And my head is just dizzy with delightfulness, really, but also a little disequilibrium. And I look over at my dad, and we're both there, and we're both clinging on, and we're both shaking. And now, looking back, I think to myself, I love my dad. He is my hero. And I think that there needs to be a few more heroic fathers in the world today.